Hey, everybody. Welcome back to LettermenRow.com. I am Jeremy Birmingham. That is Spencer Holbrook. This is The List. We are talking about Ohio State recruiting targets in the class of 2022, 2023, and beyond. Today on The List, we are talking about a defensive tackle prospect from California by way of Germany who has, in the last month or so, gone from being one of those guys that was on the periphery of the Ohio State recruiting board to being an absolute must-get based on his camp performance in Columbus in June. Spencer, we're talking Hero Kanu from Rancho. Is it a Rancho? I don't know. It's Santa Margarita Catholic High School out in California. I think it's in Rancho Santa Margarita. So you can see how I could get confused.
Yeah, and it's a confusing place out there. And you know what else is confusing? Saying that he's from California when he's actually from Germany. And what else is confusing to me is exactly how much of a member of the list Hero Kanu truly is, because this offer came by way of a camp visit. He was impressive at camp, but I'm not sure that he is as top of the list as every other player we've done on this list. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be here, but he's a big target. But also he's kind of one of those guys that I still have a couple questions about. But again, he was super impressive when we did see him at Ohio State camp, because he came back for a second day, and the second day was just as impressive as the first. He's a must get, I would say, for Ohio State because of the way the defensive line is right now. And he's been climbing up everybody's boards ever since then.
Yeah, let me put it this way. There's very few times when we're at an Ohio State recruiting camp, a one-day camp or a multi-day camp or Friday Night Lights or any of these other camps, where coaches afterwards will pull media members like myself aside and say, hey, how is that kid not a five-star prospect? And that's what happened after Hero Kanu's first workout at Ohio State. And when that sort of thing happens, my ears kind of perk up and I go, oh, wait a second, maybe people aren't paying enough attention to how highly Ohio State values this kid. But I also think that it was a situation where Ohio State didn't really know how highly they were valuing Hero Kanu until that camp performance. And at 6'5", 293 pounds, he's a kid that doesn't even look like he's ever picked up a weight in his life. He's just very natural. He's a former soccer player in Germany, very quick feet, very athletic, nimble. Reminds me of like this Ndamukong Suh type of player where he just didn't really look like he had to do much to really dominate people. And he went head to head with Josh Padilla, Ohio State's 2023 in-state target and offer from Huber Heights Wayne. And I'm telling you, Hero just kind of chucked him around the yard a little bit and made it look pretty simple. And for a kid that's only played American football for 2 years, that is stunning. And again, when you look at the size, 6'5", 293, there's nothing but upside for Hero Kanu.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, the upside. And I think at times you see him and you think maybe he's a little raw. There were a couple reps where maybe he did look a little raw. And there were a couple reps where you say like, oh my gosh, like this kid could be everything you want in a defensive tackle. And that's why I think he's so highly regarded by Ohio State. And I think that's why he's continuing to climb up the national recruiting scene. He's the 82nd overall, according to the composite ranking. He's the 99th player in the country, according to 247sports.com. And so I think he's the kind of guy that is only going to continue to rise. And I think as more people pay attention to him and as he has his senior year, he can only go up in that ranking from here.
Right. And think about it this way. This is a kid who went to 16 different colleges in June as a part of the PPI Pro Players International group from Europe. 16 different schools. He camped at Ohio State. He camped at Georgia. He camped at Oklahoma. He camped at Alabama. He went everywhere he went. He went out and competed. And to me, that was probably the most impressive thing about him, was seeing how much energy this kid had and how much dynamic ability he had, despite the fact that he had to have been wiped out after being on the road so much. And I thought the coolest thing about Hero Kanu as the day we saw him in camp, and a lot of this stuff, this conversation is based on those 2 days, was seeing the way that he acted as a leader for the other kids that were at the camp. He was extremely vocal. He was a kid that was out there pumping up the rest of the guys, players he'd never met, kids he would have never run into. And to see that sort of leadership for a kid that could very easily be like a wallflower because he is from another country, you figure he'd be a little bit like less vocal, but he was definitely not one of the more vocal kids I saw at any camp all summer. And again, I think that his ability as an athlete allows you to look at him as maybe more than just a three tech at 6'5", 295. That's a kid who has the ability to play on the edge in some capacity, almost similar to JT Tuimoloau, and that sort of size and speed combination that he has. I just think people are sleeping on him nationally. I know that he's moving up the board, Spencer, as you said, but I just don't. Have they got it right?
I don't think so. We're going to base this off of 2 days of incredible camp performance, because he really was incredible in his 2 days of camp performance. And that's why I think they could have it wrong one way. They might have it wrong the other way. Have they seen more of him than we have? Probably. Have some experts seen more of him than we have? Absolutely, because we've only seen him for 2 days. Could he be a 5-star guy? Absolutely. Could he be a guy that's, a high 4-star? Absolutely. Could he be a guy that's even a lower 4-star? Possibly. I don't think that is the case. I think he's more in the range of the high 4-star, maybe borderline 5-star guy. But we're basing all of this on 2 days. It's two of the most impressive days I've ever seen in a defensive player at Ohio State camp. I haven't been doing this near as long as you have. But when you watched him, he just popped. And then you watch the next rep, and it was even better. And then you watch the next rep, and he just continued to get better, taking the coaching from Larry Johnson. Like you said, he was, very vocal. His ability to communicate with everybody was kind of uncanny. He's the exact type of personality Ohio State looks for when they're evaluating these kids at camp.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that stood out to me the most was a lot of times kids come to Ohio State, and the place and the size and the scope of Ohio State can be somewhat overwhelming. And again, as I said earlier, you would think that Hero Kanu would have an excuse to let that be the case, and he just didn't. It didn't seem to faze him at all. And I think that it's pretty clear that the Buckeyes made a really big impression on him, which is why he decided to stay for a second day of camp and do a private one-on-one workout with Larry Johnson the second day, forcing himself to miss the travel to Texas A&M with the rest of his group and doing it by himself later. I just think that it says a lot about how Larry Johnson viewed him that day, that he wanted him to do that, but also what Hero Kanu is like as a person and as a young man who's trying to get better at football and learn the game. And to me, that's really encouraging if you're looking for, why is Ohio State a team that could be the winner here in this race eventually? He's got 3 official visits scheduled right now. He's got Oklahoma, Georgia, and Ohio State scheduled. He's going to take 2 more. He's going to go to USC and Notre Dame at the end of July unofficially and try to figure out if those 2 get into the mix for official visits. But clearly the fact that he went out and immediately scheduled his Ohio State official visit, the first visit he scheduled was Ohio State for the Penn State game. It gives you an indication that he knows that the Buckeyes are a real threat for him. And I think that from an Ohio State perspective, if you look at the defensive tackle position, yeah, you have some new guys coming through the pike in Michael Hall and Tyleik Williams, at the top of the list, of course. But what you really see here is a major vacuum at defensive tackle when you know that you're going to lose Haskell Garrett, you're going to lose Jaron Cage, you're going to lose Antoine Jackson, you're going to lose Teron Vincent by the time that this kid would be on campus. So all of a sudden, there's a lot of need for a defensive tackle, and the Buckeyes need 3 in this class of 2022. And that's why, even though we've already had Caden Curry on this show on the list, that's why I think Hero Kanu belongs right where he is on the list.
Yeah, and you have an ability to say it right, Berm. So I just think that when you look at this guy, he could be a tweener. He could be the kind of guy who can play 3-tech. He's the kind of guy who can slide in and play defensive tackle if you need him to. I think he's athletic enough to play on the outside of defensive end. And so he's the exact body type that is like part of this next wave of Larry Johnson defensive line prospects that you look at. When you look at a JT Tuimoloau, I think that's a decent comparison because of the way he could play both inside and out, the athleticism he has. You kind of want to see him on the basketball floor to see if he's good at that too, because it seems like he could be good at just about anything he picks up. He's just the exact personality, body type, ability to learn. Everything he does seems like he'd be a perfect fit in a Larry Johnson defensive line room.
Yeah, and if you watch him on film, if you are on the internet, which you are because you're watching this show, go out there and find the game tape of Hero Kanu against St. John Bosco, against Mater Dei, and what you see is like a man eater, like in the middle. Like that's a dude who's eliminating the defensive, eliminating the offensive line for 2 of the best programs in the country, and really making himself into a really difficult, out when it comes to blocking someone. And there's nothing but upside for Hero Kanu. I mean, you're talking about a kid that has every single part of the puzzle right there in front of him. And it's just about piecing it together. And that's why I think for Larry Johnson and Ohio State, knowing what they're able to do from a developmental standpoint, that's what makes Hero Kanu so attractive, is that you have all these parts, but they're not really put together. And that's what Larry Johnson does better than anybody in the country. And this is why last summer, when a Maryland commitment said that Larry Johnson is only good because he gets 5-star players. And, maybe there's a little bit of truth to it. Obviously, you're better if you start with better players, right? But you have to be able to piece those guys together. And that's what Larry Johnson does better than anybody. He finds the strengths of those guys, and then he augments the weaknesses. And he also finds a way to just make them more complete players. And I think that, for Hero Kanu, that's got to be part of the reason why Ohio State's going to be in that top group of schools. That's why he's got a top 10 of schools right now. But clearly, with 3 official visits already scheduled, pretty much to me seems like Ohio State's in the top 5. So now you start to narrow it down from there. And that's why the Buckeyes are hoping maybe even to get him back on campus at the end of July if he does make the trip to Notre Dame on the week of July 26th. The Buckeyes are having a barbecue / cookout type thing. I think it's on the 29th. So I would imagine that they'll be like, hey, you're only a couple hours away. Why don't you swing by if you can? And if, that sort of opportunity presents itself, it'd be a real good opportunity for the Buckeyes to move the dial even forward with Hero Kanu.
And to make sure that they cement themselves in that top 3, not just the top 5, but get into that, whatever that final cut down is going to be. Some of these guys do 7, 5, 3, 2, the final cut down list is somewhere in there. As long as they're in that, I think Ohio State has a good chance. You could tell when he was on campus that Hero Kanu was open to learning everything from Larry Johnson. And I think one of the things, for somebody who'd only been playing football for a couple years, I think Hero Kanu understood the magnitude of having Larry Johnson teach you. I think he understood what Larry Johnson can do for him. So I think it's another one of those recruitments that you're going to see in the next couple of years where the trump card is there for Larry Johnson and Ohio State. You got to use it. And if a player wants in, come into the class, they'll have you. If you don't, well, that's on you. I think Hero Kanu is the kind of guy who may want that teaching from Larry Johnson, because we've already seen it in a small sample size, but in a 2-day sample size, it says, hey, I'm willing to learn from him.
Yeah, I mean, he can be your hero, baby. You know what I mean? That's where I think that's where we have to end it. So on that note, I'll be like a bird and fly away. That's Spencer Holbrook. I'm Jeremy Birmingham. This is The List on LettermenRow.com. Thanks for watching. Please check out our channel for more of these videos, and like and subscribe on all of your podcast forums, and hit the little bell to subscribe. So when there's new content, you get a notification and you're like, oh my God, it's more Berman Spencer. This is amazing. Or, just check back regularly like you're doing now, which is also nice. I'm rambling. Goodbye. Have a good night. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. Have a good life. See ya.